A man by the name of Gary Kenneman once spoke about angels and said, "Guardian angels are perhaps the most popular kind, probably because we all know how fragile life can be. We desperately need protection from unexpected circumstances and unseen dangers. Just the thought of good angels hovering around us gives people a feeling of safety." So this quote relates back to the story I'm going to tell you guys all today, because one of my friend's sisters got in a bad car accident and her arm was severely cut off. This story really made me feel horrible, and it was shocking to all of us because you never know what's going to happen to you at any time in your life. So the moral I took out of this story was never take life for granted, because like I said, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. You always want to live out your day for today. The other part I took out of this story was that family is truly important to everyone. Without family, you don't have those people supporting you, helping you out through the hard times. Family really is there for you throughout your whole life. So I'm going to start out with telling you about this story that happened to my friend's sister. So it all started one day. Me and a bunch of football friends, we wanted to go up to the lake, so we asked some of our dads. So volunteer dads came out with us, went out on the boat, we went swimming, wakeboarding, tubing. We were having a blast. Like, it wasn't, no one was thinking about football, no one was thinking about anything else. All of a sudden, one of my friend's dads, his name was Hank, he got a phone call, and it was the hospital. And they had told him that his daughter was in a severe car accident and that she was in critical condition. Now, when we were on the boat watching him on the phone, you can tell it's bad news when someone starts crying right away. No one really wanted to shoot out, what's wrong. We let him, sob it out, see what's going on until he came to us. He came to us and he said, we have to pack up, we have to go. No one asked any questions. We just grabbed all our stuff, headed back to shore, got in the car. Weirdest car ride of my life. No one said a word the whole hour. We were an hour away. About 30 minutes in, he started talking. He said that I just got a call. Melissa was the girl's name, his daughter. He said that she was in a car accident and that she was in critical condition. And we were all flabbergasted. Like, no one saw it coming. No one thought of this day to come right now. And it was really an eye-opener to all of my friends in the car. We looked at each other. No one really wanted to say anything. And it really hit us hard. Now, when we got there, she was hospitalized. She was getting taken care of. No one was able to go in. We were in the emergency room. The doctor had come out, and he told us that she almost bled out to death because her arm was cut off. She was on the floor, and that she wasn't wearing her seatbelt, and that she just flew out of the car. We were all in shock. The feeling, it was indescribable to know that, a close family friend was, in critical condition, about to die. And they also said that the chances of her getting her arm reattached and being able to use it was very unlikely. So what ended up happening was she did get she regained full control of her arm. She was in the hospital about a month or so. She came out totally healthy, everything was fine. But the story that really hit us was, what happened when she came out of the car? What happened when she flew out of the car, landed on the floor? What happened between that time? Now, when she flew out of the car, there was an EMT in a car right behind where she had landed. And that guy had come out, bandaged her arm up, had an ice chest in his trunk, took out that ice chest, grabbed her arm that was a few feet away, put it in the ice chest, preserved it, put it back in the car, and called 911. Now, the doctor had come out and told us that if it wasn't for this guy who bandaged up her arm, took care of her, that she probably would have died within seconds because of bleeding out. So this is what really got me. It was thinking about this EMT guy appearing out of nowhere, just driving, being right there at the perfect time, really got me thinking about angels. Now, this couldn't have just been a random coincidence, just a random EMT guy going to work, nothing to it. He was there for a purpose, I believe. I believe he was there for a purpose, and that was to save Melissa's life, my friend's sister. This EMT, I feel like, was Melissa's guardian angel. Now, when I started to believe about angels, angels come with demons, they're not just all good angels. There's some bad angels out there. I really do feel like they're around us protecting us. They are there for the times that, we can't do anything about the situation. They're there to help us push through whatever hard times we're going through. And I really do think that we all have our own guardian angel. Family is also an important thing that we can never take for granted. You always gotta love them. You always gotta have them around. You always gotta have them there to support you through anything that goes on. Um, Respecting them, always keeping a good relationship with them, I think is a very important part of life. And yeah, a woman by the name of Janice Connell once also said that wisdom of the ages teaches that each individual, whether believer or not, good or bad, old or young, sick or well, rich or poor, has a personal guardian angel with him or her at every moment of life's journey. And I really took this and I want to share it with everyone. We all have our guardian angel and we should appreciate him. Thank you for listening.
Look at that. Cute. So my dad really likes dirt biking. Like, he loves riding his motorcycles and racing and doing tricks and all those cool things. And he's pretty good at it. I remember when I was little, he'd like pop a wheelie down the street and I was like, oh, that's so cool. Right? But from stories that like my mom and my uncles told me, sometimes when he went out, he'd just be like, he wasn't that safe about it. He was like really reckless and crazy, kind of a daredevil. And when I was like 7 or 8, he got in this like really bad dirt biking accident. And I wasn't there for the accident. I didn't get to see it. But my mom took me to the hospital to see him. And when he came home, he wasn't able to do a lot of things. So my mom pretty much just took care of everything. And even though he was the only one who got hurt in the accident, a lot of other people were affected by what happened that day. So on that day, my dad was out racing with his brother, my uncle, and like 3 of their friends. And he was like racing someone, and he went up this like jump, and I guess he went like super high into the air. But my uncle says he didn't go very, very far, at least far enough to land somewhere safe. So he just went like super high and just kind of came down. And he was really high, so he hit the ground like pretty hard. And my uncle like rushed over to him, and he was like awake but not saying anything. And my dad was like, he's this like huge guy, he's like 6 feet tall and can bench press like 400 pounds. So it took like all of them to like lug him to the truck and like rush him to the hospital. And they did a bunch of x-rays and tests and found that he was mostly just like really bruised, but that he'd broken both of his wrists so badly that he had to go into surgery and have pins inserted so that I guess his bones would stay together. And I wasn't there, for all that. But my mom took me to the hospital to go see him after, and it was really hard to look at him. He was in pain, and he was bruised, and he was tired, and both of his arms were in slings, and he couldn't do anything. And so he finally got to come home, but he still didn't really have use of really his arms. And my mom had to do everything. She had to feed him. He couldn't even go to the bathroom by himself or shower or anything. And my mom did all that stuff. And my grandma, my dad's mom, came over and helped too. But my mom pretty much did all that. And what I remember most about all this is just how helpless my dad was, because he just looked like this giant, ridiculous baby. And how just tired and sad my mom was, because I didn't know this at the time, but I found out later. They were fighting all the time because my mom was like, hey, can you stop doing this? Because I feel like the injuries are just going to get worse and worse. And my dad was like, no, just be safe next time. This won't happen, but you never know, So, but I didn't know that at the time. How this really affected me, I was really sad because I just didn't get, and I know this sounds a little selfish, but I didn't get to do the same things with my parents as I got to do before. I was really close with my dad, and I just loved when he would just take me to the park, and he just pushed me so high on the swing, and it was tickled my tummy, and it was really fun. And we couldn't do that. Even if he wanted to do anything with me, my mom would have to help him get ready, and then she'd be so tired she wouldn't want to go anywhere. And I was just really upset that, I didn't get to have the same time with them. And I mean, I was really young, and I was like, oh my god, what if he never gets better? But he got better. Eventually, his bruises healed, and he got to use his arms again, and everything pretty much went back to normal. But that experience, it made a really big impression on me, because even though he was the only one involved in the accident, so many other people, he had all the physical pain, but we had so much emotional pain from this one accident. And so I just learned that if you're gonna go out and do these things, you need to think about your impact on other people and how it's going to affect their emotions and what kind of work they might have to put in just for you to recover. And so just in general, if you're going to go out and do something that might be inherently dangerous, you should always consider other people and just be safe and be cautious. And that's all. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Rodriguez, and I am going to be giving not just a story, but a series of events that changed my mind drastically on something I used to believe in, but now I believe completely differently about. Well, during World War II, the Battle of Okinawa was one of the bloodiest battles in the history of the war. Many civilians and Japanese soldiers and U.S. Marines and soldiers were killed. I spent 3 years stationed on that island. And when we got there, we were told that a lot of these places were really haunted throughout the island. There was family tombs everywhere we couldn't touch. There was places that were just marked off, unfinished buildings that you couldn't even go into, that weren't finished because construction workers were dying, people were disappearing, and a lot of weird acts were happening. So they closed these off to the public. Now, I'll start off base. Like I said, there's a lot of tombs everywhere. There was this resort hotel up on the north part of the island. You weren't allowed to go there, but you could. So we did. And we went up there, and we didn't really see anything out of the ordinary. We just went around. It was spooky, of course. And I was like, look, ghost, whatever. Yeah, okay, got it. For the next 3 days, me and the 2 friends that went up there were probably the sickest we have ever been in our entire lives. The next morning, we all woke up with the flu, throwing up. Had to go to work still, obviously. But we were sick. Godly sick. And then, okay, excuse me, let me backtrack. So, off base wasn't the only place. A lot of occurrences happened on base. For instance, there was a gate on one of the Marine bases that was closed down permanently because Marines had reported that there was a Japanese soldier who would walk up to them while they were on guard duty and ask them for a cigarette lighter. In English. And when they would go to give him his light for a cigarette, he would disappear. There was also known to be seen on Gate 2 of the Air Force Base, they would see a platoon-sized element of soldiers walking across water that was out there. So they closed these gates down, shut them down completely, because soldiers and the military security forces would just not want to pull guard there. They refused because it was too scary. So, you drive by and you see it, and you're like, probably not. So anyway, and then there's also this house right next to the USO that has been boarded up for years and just completely closed off. Except it's right next to a child development center. It's like a daycare. And what the story goes is that 2 families heard and saw occurrences in this house. And these occurrences drove the father of both families to kill his entire family. So you read about that and you're like, maybe not. But we used to run past this house, and it could be 75 degrees outside in the morning because it's a tropical island, and you run past this house and you would get so cold. You would just run past it and you would start to feel cold inside. I still kind of shrugged off the whole ghost thing. I didn't really buy it until me and my buddy got our first apartment off base. Moved in the 3rd floor of this building, real close to the Air Force Base. And for the first few weeks, nothing was out of the normal. We were just living our lives. But I just noticed one day when my buddy was gone, and it started to happen daily after this one time, that anytime your back or side was turned to the sliding glass door with the curtain, you would feel this presence just move that curtain left and then right, left and then right, and you turn and it would stop. You think it's the wind a couple times, but it's happened every day I was there by myself. And then even when my buddy was there, occasionally the computer would be off. It would just be off. And it would turn on, and just the loudest music possible would come onto that computer through the speakers. And we'd be sitting in the living room, and the computer's in the other room, and all of a sudden this heavy metal music would just start blaring off a computer that's not even turned on. And also, we would sit there, and all doors would be closed. My buddy would come out of the room, I'd watch him close his door, and about 2 minutes later, you'd hear, boom! The door would slam. We'd look around, all doors would be closed, and maybe the bathroom door would still be open. but that's how they were before the bang. So I lived like this for about 1.5 years. And that's how I came to believe in ghosts, was through my time on Okinawa and all the hauntings that happened there. That's it.
So have you ever been out shopping, walking around, and right at the entrance, there's a box of puppies? Or walking through the farmer's market, and there's a rescue with puppies. So I started getting a puppy craving. My daughter moved away, my ex kept my dogs, I wanted a puppy. So I started looking on Pet Finder for my ideal puppy. Wanted a certain breed, certain mix. Had one before, wanted that same kind of mix. So looked on Pet Finder and found a pet that I fell in love with, called him up, scheduled a time to go meet him. Unfortunately, it was pretty far away. Had to drive to Yuba City. Never been out to Yuba City before. So I took somebody with me because I also wanted to be able to hold the puppy on the way back, because it's an 1.5 to 2 hour drive out there, and just throwing the puppy on the dash or the floorboard was not probably ideal. So took a friend with me, went out, met the rescue at a pet store, which wasn't really out of the ordinary for me because all my animals have been from rescues, been an advocate of rescues. So meeting them at a pet store really wasn't out of the ordinary. Met him at this pet store, pretty holistic pet store, so I felt okay. The puppies were just adorable. 2 puppies, boy and a girl. One was big, one was small. Fell in love with my little girl, and was just in love with my puppy. And my friend that came with me tried to hand me his iPhone and said, "Did you look?" And I'm trying to talk to the person, holding the puppy, trying to look at his iPhone, going, "What are you talking about?" And he takes the phone from me and he goes, "Never mind, just take her." I'm thinking, what's going on? Got a weird vibe, didn't really think much of it. The rescue didn't ask me a lot of questions, didn't have to fill out a lot of paperwork. All of this was a little out of the ordinary from my prior experience with adoption. Ended up getting her in the car and still falling in love with my puppy. And I asked him, "What were you talking about with the phone?" And he hands me the phone, and every review on Yelp was negative, saying that the puppies are sick with parvo and they're infested with worms. And instantly I went, oh no. Called my vet, instantly took her to the vet. She was infested with worms. But there was no outward signs of parvo, so I'm like, score, let's go. Bring her home. Take her home, and 5 days go by, named my little girl Sadie. We are just connected at the hips, and she starts throwing up. Take her back to the vet, and I drive 20 minutes away, and I knew as soon as the phone was ringing that she had parvo. So then I had to make those difficult decisions. Do I go get her? Do I try to do it myself? Do I pay the price? They gave me an estimate of anywhere from $700 to $2,000 to treat her for parvo. So I decided I'm committed to this. I'm going to actually leave her there and let her go through the treatment. And she started responding really well. So I went every day and sat with her and made sure that she was okay and got to bring her home, which was great. She had made it through everything. First night was wonderful, and then she backslid. And I ended up back in the emergency room with her on a weekend and had to put her down. So the feelings through this whole thing was like a roller coaster ride, because you get on the ride, you're all anticipating this great ride, you take off, and then you get disappointed at the end. So the outcome, I was very satisfied with the choices that I made. I talked with the rescue. I was not very nice with the rescue about the outcome of it. But I was happy with the choices that I made because I felt that she had the best possible outcome with me, and that I did the best I could in trying to keep her going with things. But the moral of my story is you have to look into the rescues before you go and adopt, which I never thought. I always thought all the rescues were just supreme and out to be good, and they're not. I have had very positive experiences in my past with my rescue organizations, but you just have to do your homework with things and make sure that you're actually doing justice to the rescues and bringing home a puppy that is actually something that you can find joy in and you can financially also take care of. And the next time you're walking through and you see that box of puppies, think twice, because when you get parvo, you have it for about 10 years in your environment, so you can't bring another animal back into your environment. So, in the end, do your research.
Most people have heard of karma, the belief that one's deeds, bad or good, result in retribution or reward. I don't really like to put a lot of belief in things that I can't see. I prefer to believe in things that I can quantify and verify, and karma isn't one of those things. But I still believe it exists, and I'm going to tell you the story about how I gained and spent an enormous amount of karma all in a single afternoon. I was working at UC Berkeley, and I hated my job. And at the end of a bad day, I would typically walk to BART and daydream about winning the lottery or creating cool artwork, anything to get my mind off the day. And when I daydream, I get very internally focused, and I don't notice what's going on around me. So apparently I hadn't quite gone fully into my head yet, because I noticed out of the corner of my eye, a man was behaving really strangely. He was bent over like 90 degrees with his hands pointing at the ground. And I guess he appeared to be looking for something. So I thought, I've had a terrible day, but maybe instead of being crabby, I can try being helpful. So I walked up to the man, and it was clear that he was not looking for a contact lens. He was shaking, and there were little drops of blood coming out of his mouth. He was having a seizure, and he was biting his tongue. So I tried to speak to the man, and he seemed to hear me okay. So I took my backpack, and I shoved this strap into his mouth to keep him from further injuring his tongue. And I just kind of didn't have a plan as to what to do after that. I couldn't leave him. So I waited till somebody came. Fortunately, somebody came along very quickly. And I flagged them down and I said, hey, go to the call box and call the campus police. This man is having a seizure and he needs help. So the student goes and calls the police, and I'm just standing there with a backpack shoved in this guy's mouth. The seizure began to get worse, and the man started urinating on himself. But that wasn't really the biggest problem. The biggest problem was that his legs were starting to give out, and I couldn't hold him up. The student returned, and he propped his shoulder underneath the man, and we flagged over another student, and he propped his shoulder under the man's other arm, and we just sort of held that formation until help arrived. Once the police and the ambulance arrived, the situation came to a conclusion pretty rapidly. I was no longer needed, so I took a moment to have a breakdown. I had used up all of my stores of clarity and bravery for the day, so I just sat down on the curb and I just started shaking. And I sat there for a little while, but eventually it started getting cold and I needed to go home. So I got myself together, went in the bathroom, washed the blood off my backpack, and started back down the hill to BART. This time walking down to BART was a lot different. I wasn't really daydreaming anymore. I was kind of turning over the events in my head, just mulling things over, and I had pretty much forgotten about my bad day at work. So I continued on, and finally I reached BART, got on the train, and continued thinking about the incident, wondering if that were to happen to me, what would the outcome be? Would a stranger stop and help me out? I finally reached my destination, got off the train, and went to get my wallet from my bus fare. No wallet. I'm digging in my backpack. No wallet. I emptied out the entire backpack. The wallet is not there. And at this point, I just wanted to cry. I had no way to get home, no bus bus fare, nothing. No cell phone, I couldn't call anybody. So I'm like, this is probably not going to end well, but I'm just going to go and ask the station agent. I mean, what else can I do? So I went to the station agent. I told him my story, and he gave me this look of pity that's reserved for people without hope. He's like, probably no chance, but I'll call the driver. He comes back and he says, you know what? You are one lucky lady. Your wallet has been found by the driver. I'm like, you're kidding. He's like, no. And in fact, the driver's a friend of yours. You know Emil? I'm like, yeah. Well, Emil's got your wallet. He just got off work. He's on his way here, and he'll give you a ride home. I'm like, awesome. I get my wallet back, and I don't have to take the bus home. Pretty good. So, cynics and skeptics may argue that karma played no relationship in those events, that they were just completely coincidental and unrelated, and my associating them with karma was just a post hoc fallacy. But I continue to believe in karma, and I gained something when I helped that stranger that day, even if it was just to forget about my own small problems for a moment.